Welcome everybody to Raw 12 Newscast. We have some interesting headlines about Africa's political and general news. Now to the headlines. South Africa, the region where political violence is on the rise ahead of elections. Today, I have again shocking news from South Africa's politics. African politics have always been in jeopardy, from assassinations to government overthrows to warlords controlling whole countries to what we are seeing at these times in South Africa. After 30 years from the transition from apartheid to democratic South Africa, the region is experiencing a lot of political violence. Mr. Lumbo, a South African politician who was murdered in KwaZulu-Natal last year, left a wife and 9 children behind him. Mr. Lumbo was a 35-year-old counselor that already felt like his life was in danger. He did tell me that from time to time there were cars that were suspicious that would follow him around, quoted from Yahoo News in an interview with his mother. According to Yahoo News, in the last year, 20 counselors have been killed in the region, and the number of elected representatives and local government officials killed in over a decade to more than 150. When will South Africa's political unrest come to an end? Hopefully soon. Now to more headlines.
Senegal's Navy intercepted 3 tons of cocaine only 150 kilometers from their capital, Dakar. On November 29, 2023, the common drug transit point of Senegal intercepted one of the largest loads of cocaine ever. 3 tons were confiscated just 150 kilometers, which is 93 miles away from their capital. Very little information has been released about the crew, but we know there were 10 passengers, with one being a Senegalese national. The Navy stated that the load would be moved to a naval base for the identification of seized products. We are still unaware of the fate of the smugglers and whether they have yet to be charged. This part of Senegal has been a drug problem, has had drug problems in the past from Latin American cartels attempting to smuggle into Europe. 2 such instances consist of one from January where 800 kilograms had been confiscated, and another back in 2019 where 750 kilograms had been intercepted by a ship coming from Brazil. Now for more news.
As many parts of Africa were finally recovering from one of the worst droughts they've experienced in decades, which forced millions into a famine, yet another devastating disaster has struck the people of Africa. These heavy rains that started in October have brought death, destruction, and displacement to hundreds of thousands of people. In Somalia, over 650,000 people have been displaced because of the floods. The Horn of Africa is where the floods are hitting the hardest. More than 2 million people have been forced from their homes, and almost 300 died in Somalia, Kenya, and Ethiopia. Somalia is really the country that is being hit the hardest, both with the actual rain itself and economically. These floods have truly exacerbated a deep humanitarian crisis in this struggling country. In Somalia alone, around 1.5 million children are facing malnutrition. According to Phys.org, a UN envoy, George Conway, said, "Recurrent climate shocks, widespread insecurity, and rampant poverty have pushed the people of Somalia to breaking point." It's projected that 4.3 million people are forecast to face crisis-level hunger very soon. Hopefully this detrimental situation will come to an end for the millions who are suffering. And now, on to more headlines.
The Nigerian army accidentally strikes its own village with a drone, at least 88 dead. A tragic accident where the Nigerian army accidentally strikes Tulumbiri, a village in Kaduna State. The villagers were celebrating a Muslim holiday, the birthday of Prophet Muhammad Mawlid al-Nabi. The military says that the troops wrongfully analyzed and misinterpreted activities. Troops were carrying out aerial patrols when they saw a group of people acting like armed bandits who had been terrorizing the communities in that region before the drone strikes. Locals have been left with anger and confusion. How can something like this happen? This is not the first time the Nigerian army has hit its civilians. According to research firm SB Morgan, at least 300 people have been killed in accidental military strikes since 2017. The president sent his condolences to the families of victims and directed a full-fledged investigation of the incident.
What's really absurd to me is how there were 2 airstrikes that fell close to each other. In my opinion, it indicates that these airstrikes were no accident. The Nigerian government is trying to hide the evidence. According to Legit, Nigeria is a half Muslim and half Christian country, so this attack can be an attack perpetrated against the Muslims of Nigeria.
How many civilians can the Nigerian military kill before we understand that maybe it wasn't just an accident? They keep apologizing, but an apology means nothing if you continue the attacks.
I think that maybe this accidental strike is the one that lets people see that it obviously isn't an accident anymore. Like the article said, around 300 people have died just from these accidental strikes, and if they keep apologizing but they're not changing anything, then I don't think it seems like an accident.
Sometimes it's hard to completely eliminate civilian casualties when there is bandits mixed in with the villagers and they carry out airstrikes. Civilian casualties are going to happen sometimes.
I can see that, and I can also agree with what you're saying, but also how did they should have made sure those people that were celebrating their Muslim holiday were actually bandits. And I think that's where the Nigerian army actually failed. Now, with the research that we have done and we have showed, this is not the first time. And actually, they've claimed 300 people's lives, as Zahilan said, and that does not just happen by confusion. This is deliberate. So I think the Nigerian army should really, really look into what they're doing and look into their protocols, and the international community should go and look into those cases, because Nigerian lives are not a waste. Thank you for listening to Row 12 Newscast. Hopefully, you hear some better news from our channel. Thank you and goodbye. Wave.